Hey everyone, thank you so much for your work so far in this class. This is much later than I had hoped it would be, and so some of the information is probably past super relevant, but here it is anyway. Uh, I also want to say that both of the sections of 101 that I'm teaching right now, you guys have had fantastic responses both to each other and to the material. You are writing with a level of academic verve and interest that I rarely see in my classes. So thank you for your hard work and for sticking through it. We're almost at the midterm, so check out those grades in 3 days, and I'll sleep sometime. But I know you know how that goes. I think almost everyone is also working and doing. It's busy. My house has had a lot of sickness in it. But we're playing catch up and we're going to get there. Let's take a look at the things that I wanted to talk to you about, some of your work so far. So these things are just a quick outline of what we're going to look at. This is a technical issue that I saw, this first one, quotes in brackets, in a lot of your work with the introducing quotes exercise. The thing I want to remind you of is that the quote that you couch within your own sentence necessarily has to still be grammatically correct. And so sometimes we have to make adjustments to the quote to do that. And I know that sounds like kind of creepy because you're adjusting a quote, and it's true that some people use this maliciously. So part of academic integrity is not using it maliciously. So you're probably familiar with this line from Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, right? Now the T is capitalized. So if I am going to quote this in my quote, I can't have a capital T in the middle of the sentence because that's not correct. So what I do is I place it in brackets. And those brackets say, hey, I made this alteration here. So you can do this to make stuff fit grammatically, or, if a pronoun doesn't have an antecedent in the quote itself, so it doesn't make sense, you can put the actual antecedent there instead of the pronoun. And then sometimes you have to break the quote as well, right? So two with the brackets, roads, quote, that, and then, we've got this quote here. And then we continue on. Just be aware that this is an option, right? You can do that to make it fit grammatically. That was probably the number one error that I saw across all of the quoting assignment. So just be aware that that's an option. 2, please read instructions carefully. I know this is an annoying thing to have in here, but some assignments you have options between 1 and 2, and in some assignments it's both of them, right? And you need to do both. So please do that carefully. The most points that I have lost, because again, your work that you've done has been very good. When people are losing points, it's because it's an instruction that's missed, not because of an error in the work itself. So please do read those. So like the rhetorical awareness exercise, which I wanted to talk about. So this particular exercise, I feel like is missing a few things, and it is glib in places that might make you misunderstand some of what we, the writers of the course, are hoping you'll understand about Burke and rhetoric generally. So I wanted to add a thing here to Kairos, or to this sort of classical rhetorical pairing of ethos, pathos, and logos. This is pretty familiar across, first year composition classes, people or communications classes. Credibility, emotion, and reason, these are the things you can kind of appeal to. The separation, I think, is useful for analyzing arguments before you make them. It's important to note, too, though, that nothing is ever one thing. Often it's a blend, which if you're trying to articulate which appeal you're doing, part of the frustration is that, it is more than one thing. I also wanted to include this here, empathy, because it seems to me like when we talk about the rhetorical triangle of ethos, pathos, and logos, pathos is often called a fallacy, right? To appeal to emotion is fallacious, and it certainly can be, right? You can use emotions to manipulate, you can use emotions to mislead or to encourage someone to act irrationally, but it's not as though, and I think that sometimes when we're analyzing argument, we imply this, it's not as though emotion is illogical. Emotion can be illogical, but the fact that something is emotional does not make it inherently illogical. And oftentimes, when we miss out on the emotion of something, when we miss out on that empathy, all the logic in the world can lead you down some very dark paths. And so I think that pathos gets a bad rap because of its association with manipulation. I would even argue that oftentimes pathos is abused by poor logos. So a thing is made to seem a certain way, but that argument is not rational. And so it produces an irrational emotion and response. So pathos is important and related to empathy, blah, 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 blah. Also, though, kairos. So kairos is about timing and situational awareness. And this is a thing that I consider it kind of the key between all of these. You have to have this for any of these to work. So go ahead and add that in your sort of mental logbook of words that you're thinking about when you're trying to make arguments. There's ethos, there's pathos, there's logos, and there's kairos. When are you going to make the big point land? And that's a really important one. We also talk about Kenneth Burke in this and his grammar of motives, the dramatic pentad, scene, act, agent, agency, and purpose. I wanted to point out here, because I'm a big Burke fan, that for Burke, motivation is something that's constructed after the fact. We do things for reasons and the ways we feel and all that. But when we're talking about motivation as, an explanatory thing, or we are analyzing someone's motivation, including our own, that's something that we construct afterwards. We think about things in order to figure out why we did them. And then we say that was our motivation. But since we don't have access to the actual events themselves, we are remembering. And these are the things that help us to sort of remember and reconstruct. So motivation is a constructed thing. So he's looking at scene, what's the context, act, what was done, agent, who did it, agency, what tools or means do they have at their disposal. This is often one that gets kind of confused with this. These two get kind of confused. So make sure you're differentiating. Your agents are your characters. Your agency is what they have. So to give you an example of this, if someone has a badge and a gun, right, that's an agency, right? There are things that they can do with those that someone who doesn't have them cannot do, right? If someone has good running shoes on versus office shoes or slides, right? And they're running, these are agencies. They are means. And a means can be anything. It can be being able-bodied. It can be like physical, actual tools that you have. It can be training that you have, right? It is an often overlooked piece of the analysis. And then purpose is what is the goal. And so when we're using Burke's dramatic pentad, what I'd like for you to do is take each of these and kind of go beyond your first reaction. So when you're looking at the scene or the context, instead of saying like, oh, this is what it is, go one step beyond that to say, what is outside of this let's bring more into the context. Let's look at different contexts or imagine, what happened just before or what's happening afterwards. What heavier context is there? For the act, an act is never done in isolation. We have to look at other things as well, although this is the most immediate part of something, if we're so this one doesn't expand as much as the others. For the agent, we can always expand the agent, not by just asking like, who are they, but what is their particular background? What is their individual context that makes them who they are? Same with agency. This is an important part of understanding why events unfolded the way that they did, because not all agents are the same. We tend to think of agents as good or bad, but often an agent is someone, instead of good or bad, it might be better to think, in many cases anyway, of who has the right agency and who does not have agency. And then goals, right? Always a good thing to look at. So this can help us construct motivation or analyze rhetoric. This can help us understand and employ these three better. For unique tone, some of you have gotten this comment. This does not mean I think you're cheating. Oops. This doesn't mean I think you're cheating. I've had a handful of people who have cheated, but not in these two courses, really not very many. This does mean, though, that your tone is sounding a lot like the the AI tone in writing. So if you've ever, you watch like YouTube shorts or TikTok videos or something, and you get that AI voiceover, this person was doing, whatever it is, it's really grating and nobody likes it, and I don't know why it's there. Some of the writing is sort of, writing styles are moving towards this chat GPT-esque way of communicating, right? We're regressing towards the mean. And so I am encouraging you to be yourself, even if it means making technical errors. Be yourself. I'm not saying don't use AI to edit grammar or mechanics or anything like that. That's fine. But do develop your own tone. This is increasingly important. I was at a conference recently where and I'm not joking about this, there were professors I was speaking to who said they gave higher grades often to papers with errors in them because they knew they were written by people. And I thought that was kind of crazy. Use the tool you have to fix the errors, but just that's kind of a sign of how things are changing. MLA headings should look like this. Go ahead and practice doing this on all your papers. This is the due date down here, right? The day, the month it's due, and the year. Just go ahead and structure it like this. And here is this for Google Docs. So this is something you have access to. Let me zoom in a little bit. How do I zoom? I'm an old man. This is something you have access to through the Writing Center. And if you don't have access to the Writing Center Canvas shell, y'all let me know, and I think you have it in your assignments there. You can just click on it there. But if not, let me know, and I'll put a link in the announcements for everybody. But this gives you your sort of template. What mode am I in? Because it's not showing me. There we go. Okay, so it also has the last name up there. I need to be in print layout. Or my watch is telling me to go to bed. You have access to this. You can just type your papers in here. The thing I wanted to bring your attention to, though, was under tools and citations. So I've put in a sample citation over here, but you can just click on your format, whether it's MLA or APA, add a new source. And there are websites that do this, but this is built into the actual thing itself, right? Type everything in, and then what you'll end up with is something that looks like this. So when you get to, I'll just type some random stuff here, right? So when you get to where you want to insert a citation, you just click cite and it drops it in. You go edit your page number, right? And then put your punctuation afterwards, and that's your citation. And then at the end, you hit insert works cited, and it drops your works cited in. It's just so helpful and so useful, and I hope that you will all make use of it, because it is a great way to save yourself some time and energy. The last thing that I wanted to ask you to do is, if you have time, send me an email or a message just to say like, hey, the feedback when I was doing my peer review worked or didn't work, and here's what I did, because I got a bunch of people saying it did work and a bunch of people saying it didn't work, and I'm not sure why. So if it worked for you or it didn't work for you, and you've got the time to say like, this is what I did, it just popped up and I did it, or nothing ever showed up, and you have any inkling as to why, let me know. But yeah, that's all. Thank you guys so much.